The desert heat of Iraq had been my reality for 18 months. 18 months of wondering if I'd ever see home again, if I'd ever sit at my grandmother's kitchen table while she told me stories about our family's past. But when my deployment ended 3 weeks early due to a paperwork error, I didn't call ahead. I wanted to surprise them. I wanted to see the joy in their faces when I walked through that familiar front door. What I found instead would haunt me forever. The flight from Baghdad to Dallas felt eternal. Every mile taking me closer to the people I'd missed most. My grandmother Rose had written me letters every single week, her handwriting becoming shakier with each one, but her love never wavering. My parents had been less consistent, but I understood they were busy with their lives. What I didn't understand was how busy they really were, and what they were too busy to notice. The taxi dropped me off at our family home in suburban Dallas on a Tuesday afternoon in October. The lawn was overgrown, newspapers piled up on the porch, and something felt wrong immediately. I used my old key, expecting to hear grandmother's voice calling from the kitchen, asking who was there. Instead, silence greeted me like a cold slap across the face. The house felt abandoned. Covered everything, and there was a staleness in the air that spoke of weeks without human presence. I called out, my voice echoing through empty rooms. Grandma Rose. Mom? Dad? Nothing. My heart began to race as I searched every room, finding them all empty, beds unmade, closets half open as if someone had packed in a hurry. Then I found the note on the refrigerator written in my mother's hurried handwriting. Gone to Cabo for 2 weeks. Rose is at Sunset Manor. Back soon. Love you. The date on the note was from 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks. My blood ran cold as I realized my grandmother had been alone in some facility for over a month, while my parents extended their vacation indefinitely. Leave a comment below with the word family, if you believe family should always come first. Don't forget to subscribe to hear how this story unfolds. Sunset Manor was a 20-minute drive across town, and with every mile, my anxiety grew. This wasn't the plan we'd discussed before I deployed. Grandmother was supposed to stay in our family home, where she'd lived for 40 years. Where every corner held memories of the woman who'd raised me when my parents were too focused on their careers to notice their own son. The facility looked decent enough from the outside, but something about the smell inside told a different story. Disinfectant couldn't mask the underlying odor of neglect and despair. When I asked for Rose Thompson at the front desk, the young receptionist looked confused, flipping through paperwork with obvious frustration. Thompson, she muttered. Oh yes, room 247, but sir, I should warn you. She's been asking for family for weeks. No one's visited since she arrived. Words hit me like shrapnel. No visitors. For weeks. While I'd been dodging bullets in a foreign desert, my grandmother had been imprisoned in this place, forgotten by the very people she'd sacrificed everything to love. Walking down that sterile hallway felt like walking toward my own execution. Each step brought me closer to a truth I wasn't ready to face. Room 247 was at the end of a long corridor, and when I pushed open the door, I saw her. My strong, vibrant grandmother, the woman who'd taught me to fish, who'd bandaged my scraped knees, who'd held me when nightmares kept me awake, was now a frail shadow lying in a narrow bed, staring at the ceiling with vacant eyes. Grandma Rose, I whispered, approaching slowly. Her head turned, and for a moment confusion clouded her features. Then recognition dawned, and tears began streaming down her sunken cheeks. Johnny, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Johnny, is that really you? I took her hand, shocked by how fragile it felt, how cold her skin was. It's me, Grandma. I'm home. What happened next broke something inside me that I don't think will ever fully heal. She tried to sit up, failed, then grabbed my hand with surprising strength. They left me here, Johnny. They said it would just be for a few days while they took a little vacation. That was so long ago. I keep asking the nurses when my family's coming, but they just give me more pills and tell me to rest. The rage building inside me was different from anything I'd felt in combat. This wasn't enemy fire or roadside bombs. This was betrayal by the people who were supposed to love her most. How long have you been here, Grandma? I asked, though I dreaded the answer. I don't know anymore, sweetheart. Time moves funny here. But it's been long enough that I started thinking maybe everyone forgot about old Rose. I spent the next hour listening to her describe her experience at Sunset Manor. The staff was understaffed and overwhelmed. Meals were often cold by the time they reached her room. She'd lost weight because she had trouble feeding herself, and no one had time to help. The worst part was the loneliness. She'd lie awake at night, wondering if she'd done something wrong to deserve being abandoned by her family. That night, back at the empty house, I did something I should have done weeks earlier. I checked my parents' social media accounts. I found there made me question everything I thought I knew about the people who'd raised me. Facebook posts from Cabo San Lucas, dozens of them. Pictures of my parents on beaches, at restaurants, on boats, cocktails and smiling. Like they didn't have a care in the world, the posts told a story of an extended vacation that had turned into something approaching a lifestyle change. Another gorgeous sunset in paradise, my mother had written just 3 days earlier. Living our best life, my father had posted alongside a photo of them parasailing. There were comments from friends asking about grandmother, and my parents' responses made my stomach turn. "She's getting the best care money can buy," they'd written. "Finally, time for us to live a little." Here's what really gets to me, and I hope you'll understand why this story is so important. Subscribe if you agree that some betrayals cut deeper than any battlefield wound. I couldn't sleep that night, haunted by images of my grandmother lying in that sterile room, forgotten and alone, while the people she devoted her life to were living it up in Mexico. I kept thinking about all the times she'd put family first, all the sacrifices she'd made without ever complaining or asking for recognition. Rose had raised me from age 8 to 16, while my parents built their respective careers. She'd never married, had devoted her entire life to family. When my parents finally got established and took me back, she'd moved into our guest room. Not because she needed care, but because she wanted to stay close to the family she loved more than life itself. And this was how they'd repaid her sacrifice. By morning, I'd made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't going to leave my grandmother in that place another day. I didn't care about medical recommendations or legal complications. It was bringing her home, back to the place where she belonged, where she could spend whatever time she had left surrounded by love, instead of indifference. The confrontation with the Sunset Manor staff was heated but brief. They tried to explain liability issues and medical protocols, but I wasn't interested in their excuses. My grandmother wanted to come home. I had power of attorney documents I'd obtained before deploying, and nothing they said was going to change. My mind, by noon, I was wheeling her out of that place, and I could see relief flooding her eyes like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Bringing grandmother home meant transforming our house into something it had never been before, a place focused entirely on love and care rather than convenience and career advancement. I moved my old bedroom furniture out and brought in a hospital bed, arranged medications, set up a system for monitoring her condition. It was like creating a sanctuary in the middle of what had become a monument to selfish neglect. Those first few days together were magical in ways I struggled to describe. Grandmother Rose seemed to come back to life just from being in familiar surroundings. She wanted to sit by the window where she could watch the birds at the feeder she'd maintained for decades. She asked me to read to her from the same books she'd read to me as a child. Most importantly, she wanted to talk, to share stories I'd never heard before. The stories she told me during those quiet afternoons revealed a family history I'd never known. She spoke about her own parents, immigrants who'd worked multiple jobs to give their children better opportunities. She talked about the sacrifices her generation had made during World War II, about rationing and victory gardens and communities that pulled together during hard times. Most painfully, she shared her disappointment about what she saw as the selfishness of more recent generations. "I don't understand what happened, Johnny," she said one afternoon while I was helping her eat lunch. "When did family stop mattering? When did taking care of each other become optional instead of automatic? I raised your father to understand that family comes first, always. But somewhere along the way, he forgot that lesson, and I blame myself for not reinforcing it better." Meanwhile, my attempts to contact my parents in Mexico were becoming increasingly frustrating. Phone calls went straight to voicemail. Text messages were ignored. Their social media posts continued, showing their extended vacation lifestyle, but they weren't responding to any communication about grandmother's condition or my unexpected return home. It was as if they'd decided that being unreachable somehow absolved them of responsibility. The psychological toll of the situation was enormous. It's made worse by the PTSD I was already struggling with after 18 months in a combat zone. Come home expecting healing and family support, only to find betrayal and abandonment. Some nights I'd lie awake wondering if I was losing my mind, if the moral clarity I thought I'd gained in Iraq was somehow distorted. But then I'd hear grandmother's gentle breathing in the next room. Remember what really mattered. What sustained me during those difficult weeks was the unexpected support from neighbors and old family friends who began reaching out once word spread that I was home and caring for grandmother. Mrs. Patterson from next door started bringing casseroles. Tom Rodriguez, who'd known our family for 20 years, helped me install safety rails and ramps. These people, who had no obligation to help, were showing more family loyalty than my actual parents. The most painful part of caring for grandmother during those weeks was watching her gradual decline while simultaneously witnessing her moments of startling clarity. There were days when she seemed almost like her old self, when we'd sit together planning gardens for next spring or discussing books we wanted to read together. Then there were other days when confusion clouded her thoughts, when she'd ask repeatedly when her son was coming home, forgetting that he'd chosen to stay away. During one of her lucid periods, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength and looked directly into my eyes. "Johnny, I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, don't let what your parents did turn you bitter. They're weak people who never learned to put others before themselves. But you're different. You have your grandfather's heart and my stubborn streak. Promise me you'll use those gifts to be better than they are." After 6 weeks of radio silence, my parents finally returned from their extended vacation. I heard them before I saw them, their voices loud and jovial as they pulled into the driveway with their luggage and suntan skin. They walked into the house expecting to find things exactly as they left them, only to discover their dying mother in a hospital bed in the living room, and their son, whom they thought was still in Iraq, tending to her with the dedication they'd never shown. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything our family had ever experienced. Years of suppressed resentment exploded into the open as I confronted them about their abandonment of the woman who'd sacrificed everything for them. They defended themselves with excuses that sounded hollow even to their own ears, claiming they'd needed a break, that they'd trusted the facility to provide adequate care, that they hadn't realized how much time had passed. "She could have died alone," I told them, my voice shaking with rage and grief. "The woman who raised you, who put you before herself every single day of your life, could have died completely alone because you were too selfish to cut short your vacation to check on her condition." "What kind of people does that make you?" Question hung in the air, like smoke from a battlefield. I could see in their faces that they knew they had no adequate answer. What happened next surprised everyone, including me. Grandmother Rose, who had been quietly listening from her bed, called us all over to her side, with a strength that seemed to come from somewhere beyond her failing body. She spoke to my parents with a clarity that cut through all their defenses and excuses. "I forgive you," she said simply. "But forgiveness doesn't mean I approve of what you did. It means I won't carry anger toward you into whatever comes next. That's a gift I'm giving myself, not you." Then she asked to speak with me privately. With trembling hands, she pulled an envelope from beneath her pillow. It's an envelope containing documents she'd somehow managed to prepare during her stay at Sunset Manor. "Everything I have is yours now, Johnny. The house, my savings, everything. Your parents made their choice about what matters to them. I'm making mine about who deserves what I've spent my life building." 3 days later, on a quiet Thursday morning, Grandmother Rose passed away peacefully in her sleep. I was holding her hand, reading to her from one of our favorite books, when her breathing simply became gentler and gentler until it stopped. Altogether, in that moment, I felt a strange mixture of profound sadness and deep gratitude that she hadn't died alone and forgotten in that sterile facility, that her last weeks had been filled with love and dignity. The funeral arrangements revealed the final chapter of our family's dysfunction. My parents wanted a small, quick service that wouldn't interfere with their plans to return to Mexico for the winter season they'd apparently decided to make permanent. I insisted on the kind of celebration of life that grandmother deserved, something that honored her decades of selfless service to family and community. The conflict over these arrangements made it clear that we were no longer really family in any meaningful sense. The service itself was beautiful. It's filled with neighbors and friends who shared memories of a woman who touched countless lives through small acts of kindness and consistent care for others. My parents sat in the front row like strangers, uncomfortable with the attention focused on virtues they'd never cultivated themselves. After the burial, they approached me with what I can only describe as relief, eager to finalize estate details and return to their self-centered lifestyle. The reading of grandmother's will was the final revelation in a story full of painful discoveries. She'd left detailed instructions about her wishes, including a letter to be read aloud that explained her decisions. To my son and daughter-in-law, the letter began. I leave my forgiveness and my hope that someday you'll understand what you've lost by choosing convenience over character. To my grandson Johnny, I leave everything else because he understood what family really means. The aftermath of grandmother's death and the inheritance has permanently altered our family relationships. Though I'm not sure we were really a family anymore anyway. My parents returned to Mexico, apparently unbothered by losing both their inheritance and their relationship with their son. They send occasional cards on holidays, but there's no real connection left between us. I've had to accept that some people are simply incapable of the kind of love that requires sacrifice. What I've learned from this experience goes far beyond family dynamics or inheritance disputes. I've learned that character is revealed not during good times, but during moments when doing the right thing requires genuine sacrifice. I've learned that love without action is just sentiment, and that real family bonds are created through consistent care rather than shared DNA. Most importantly, I've learned that honoring someone's memory means living according to the values they tried to teach you. Today, I live in grandmother's house, surrounded by reminders of what genuine love looks like. I've started a support group for other veterans dealing with family issues, and I volunteer at local nursing homes, making sure other elderly residents don't face the loneliness my grandmother experienced. It's my way of making sure her sacrifices weren't wasted, but the lessons she taught me continue to make a difference in the world. What do you think about family obligations and the sacrifices we should make for those who sacrificed for us? Have you experienced similar betrayals within your own family? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories about the challenges that shape us. There are more powerful family stories coming that will make you think deeply about what really matters in life.